You say you wanna get over. What are you gonna do? Watch the world go by in a corner of the room. I know it's none of my business, but there's something I need to say. If you could see you the way I see you, you start flying on your own. Step aside and let your light shine. Let your love show. It's a short ride down that long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go. This world is ready and waiting for you to break on through. It's time to recognize, to realize that you're the only one like you. Step on up, step into your greatness. Don't be afraid. There's a place where you will rise up to. No one else can do what you do. So get out of the way, let your light shine. Let your love show. It's a short ride down that long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go. So get out of the way, let your light shine, let your love show. It's a short ride down that long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go. Oh, let your light shine, let your love show. It's a short ride down that long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go. Let your light shine.
Hello. And hello, everybody out there. I'm so happy to present to you Molly Hammer and her accompanist, Ken Lovern. And they're joining us today for a wonderful service that we have planned. Molly, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And we'll reserve an embrace for a different time.
Great.
Okay? So it is approximately 10:30 here in Kansas City on the plaza. And we've had a lot of interesting events take place over the last 3 days. As many of you have read, and there have been protests, and some of the protests got quite violent, and there was some vandalism that was done. We had a huge stone about the size of a grapefruit thrown through our front door window, and the police have totally locked the entire plaza down. There are roadblocks on every road leading to the plaza, and this morning coming in, we had to stop. We were checked by the police. Some people were redirected, and they had to park several blocks away. So it's a very interesting time. With that in mind, today our service is going to focus on the situation that we're in. And when I say we, I mean everybody. everybody in this world, everybody in this country, everybody in this city, everybody that is a part of this community that's watching today. So please stay tuned, and we'll move into the service in just a moment. But before we do, please join me in the opening prayer and the call to inspiration. Excuse me, stop, back up. Temple chimes, opening prayer, and the call to inspiration. The opening prayer can be found on the screen in front of you, and I ask you to say it with me if you choose. On this day, we dedicate ourselves to peace on earth. We accept ourselves without harsh judgment and express appreciation for our individuality. We live without fear to meet the events of this day with confidence. We accept others without prejudice to experience a sense of unity with all people. We honor our earthly environment and recognize a oneness with all creation, in harmony with ourselves, our lives, other people, and all of nature. We live this day with a peaceful mind, a peaceful heart, and a peaceful spirit. For this we pray, thank you, God, amen.
Everything must change. Nothing stays the same. Everyone must change. No one stays the same. The young become the old, and mysteries do unfold, 'cause that's the way of time. Nothing and no one goes unchanged. There are not many things in life you can be sure of, except rain comes from the clouds, sun lights up the sky, and hummingbirds do fly. Winter turns to spring. A wounded heart must heal, but never much too soon. Yes, everything must change. The young become the old, and mysteries do unfold, 'cause that's the way of time. Yes, nothing and no one goes unchanged. There are not many things in life you can be sure of, except rain comes from the clouds, sun lights up the sky, and butterflies do fly. Rain comes from the clouds, sun lights up the sky, and music makes me cry.
Thank you once again, Molly Hammer. Well, I am so pleased today to be able to have our guest speaker. We're going to engage in a dialogue and try to come up with some answers that will bring a sense of peace to us in these very unraveling times. So I proudly present to you, and this will probably be her last talk in Kansas City as she's moving to Phoenix, June 16th. Not Phoenix, but Arizona.
South Tucson.
Somewhere south.
Green Valley.
Green Valley, she says. Anyway, please join me in welcoming Donna Johnson. So Donna, let me ask you something. What are you thinking about what's taking place right now? Never in my wildest dreams would I imagine here at Unity Temple that we'd have protesters in the streets with signs and throwing stones through windows and doing other sorts of vandalism. And somebody asked me, doesn't that just irritate you? And I said, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. That rock was thrown for a specific reason, to get my attention. Mm-hmm. And there's something that they want me to hear and other people to hear. You know, when I was third grade, out in the playground, there was a fellow in the fourth grade. He'd always come up and pinch me right in the back of the arm. And it hurt. He'd pinch hard. And in the beginning, I had everything I do to just hold back the tears. As it continued, it kept making more and more angry. And so I would shout out at the guy. And he wouldn't stop. He persisted and he persisted. And one day, there was a plank of wood there on the ground, and I just picked it up and I hit him in the head with it. And I said, stop it. That was the key phrase, stop it. Well, when I look at our world today, where things happen that make people angry, and they get angry because they're hurt. When we get hurt, we get angry. If we get hurt, again, in the same way, with the same similar circumstance, we get angry again, but that's topped on the anger we had before. And each time, the anger expresses itself a little bit more loudly, sometimes a little bit more destructively, but that's because nobody's listening. Mm-hmm. The voices out there today, the protesters, whatever they're doing, it is, please listen to me. And when you listen, it's stop this. Stop the needless killing. Stop the discrimination and prejudices that affect people with brown and black skin. Stop that which damages the connection we try to establish within our community. So what has your experience been of this?
As I watched the demonstration and the riots last night, and this morning, that this is happening all over the country in many, many cities, it makes me sad. I get sad. I don't get angry so much as the sadness. And when you think about it, anger is a stage of sadness. So people are angry because they have lost a natural God-given connection to one another. And whether that's been deliberate, and I do believe in some instances it is deliberate because of mindsets that people hold, attitudes, beliefs that are erroneous beliefs. They're not in alignment with spiritual principles. And there's a disconnection. And from that disconnection, the grief and then the acting out. What struck me as really interesting is people show up to protest in a peaceful manner their sadness and their cry for help, can't we change this, and their willingness to help. And then as the evening wears on, it becomes more and more violent. What struck me is that the same things were happening all over the country. Police vehicles being burned, fires set in the asphalt in the middle of the protest. Last night, bottles of frozen water were thrown at the police. Now that takes preparation and forethought. This is not just a passionate, I've had it, this is forethought. And I do find it frightening for our country, frightening for our world. I have a lot of questions about what is happening and the origin and how this is occurring and what's really behind it. But I do believe, as you said, Duke, at the very core, it's disenfranchised people wherever they are. In the U.S., the world over, it's people who have lost their connection to God and to each other.
Well, oftentimes with chaotic situations like this, it takes a very big eruption of anger and negative emotions just to get people's attention. Like, this is real. And this is something that has happened continually now, not just with the police and the African American community, but just in the average everyday person that goes to the grocery store that has a skin color that is different than Caucasian per se. And they get it with the looks on people's faces that are highly discriminating. They get it from lack of kindness and many other things. So perhaps this is bringing it to the forefront. Last night we had a couple of people that work here, and they joined the protest in a very peaceful way. And one of them did have an experience with tear gas. There was a pretty heavy wave of it down at J.C. Nichols Fountain at Main and 47th. And then one got maced from about a foot away by a police officer that was trying to get the crowds to move back or something. But the whole point of this is, it's not beyond the realm of possibility to make sure this never happens again. And when I talk about never happening, I'm talking about the law enforcement people, taking the life of somebody without all due caution. That doesn't have to continue. There's somebody that can snap their fingers and say, stop it. And then also this is a real waking up sign to address all the other people that face this on a daily basis. Not only the blacks, but the whites, the Asians, the Hispanics. For some reason, our community is fractured to the point where we have very thick boundaries drawn between the races in the different cultures here in Kansas City. But this is a time to listen and to move forward and fix it. It can be fixed.
Yes. And we know there are all kinds of prejudices. It's not just a racial, there's religious, there's gender, there's sexual orientation. There are all kinds of divisions, fragmentation of us as a humanity. So the question is, what thoughts can we be holding? What behaviors can we be modeling? And what is the truth of our being that unites rather than splits us apart? How do we judge one another? And try as we might to not judge ever, that slips in. Somebody hurts our feelings. Somebody makes a flippant statement that triggers a past experience, an unhealed wound. It can happen all the time. The question is not so much what happens, it's our response to it. So, what is our response to all of this? What is our response? What will come of this? And what is our responsibility as spiritual leaders and spiritual people who gather together in community to pray for peace and to affirm the power of love to heal? How is that going to be recognized in proportion to the violence, the demonstrations, the riots? And it does. It has to rise to that level, not preachiness, but by example.
So from what I understand you saying is this whole thing begins not with just let's fix this and move on, but it's a generational thing. The discriminations and the prejudices that many carry that are unfair, negative, and despicable, they didn't come into this world with those attitudes. Somebody told them something that stuck.
That's
and
right.
so that's their belief system that they're going through life on. And it's probably a generational thing to move to a place where we're in our natural, and when I say our natural experience of seeing each other with a sense of oneness and respect.
And one of my favorite biblical quotes is, "A little child shall lead them." And we often think that has to do with the birth of Jesus and the little child, but it's our child. You know, our child is wounded, abused, neglected by us. By us. We're feeding it junk food, you know, and expecting it to have healthy self-esteem, because when we are centered in the power of that innocence, and that's really what I'm talking about, we naturally will care for the people around us. If we care for one another, that's reflected back. You know, the deep, deep wound in America right now. And it's surfacing, and I believe it's being called forth for healing, but also for manipulation as well. I mean, there's all kinds of undercurrent energies, which is why it is vitally important that we who live by spiritual principles stay centered in that and be mindful of our own thoughts and our own behaviors, and to continually, from the heart space, send forth that healing energy, and to do that on a regular basis. It's not just about me and mine and my experience and my world. This is my world. My world last night was rocked.
Yes.
You know, I can read about what happened in New York City and say, oh my, that's terrible. But when it comes to your doorstep, when the helicopters are flying over your house for hours nonstop, which was my experience, and I know you just live a mile away, same direction, I know you heard them as well. And people are frightened on every level because they don't know what's going to happen next. So
That's true, and we don't like that.
No,
we
we
don't not like not knowing what is going to happen next.
correct.
But keeping that in mind, we do have the power.
Yes.
When I say we, I mean we as the human species. We do have the power to evolve this into what life is meant to be, which is a sense of true peace and harmony with everybody. Yeah, there's only one world, one earth, and we all share it. Everybody shares it. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody has an equal share. Some people might have more property, some people might have more material possessions, but everybody shares in the ownership of this earth. And there's a lot of talk about white privilege And I kind of took that on for a while and felt guilty because I have privileges that a lot of other people don't have, not only African Americans, but white people as well. I've got a good job. I have a place to live. I've got a car. And I feel privileged, and I thank God for that privilege. But where privilege ends, I believe, is when somebody assumes that they have a right
Yes.
that somebody else doesn't have.
Yes.
When they're in the field of inequality, and they said nobody else can come in here because this is my privilege. That's where I draw the line. And that sort of thinking has to be exterminated. It has to be extinguished so that it's no longer in the human consciousness.
Yes. And we also know that change has to happen within before it really happens without. We cannot force, we cannot control what other people think and believe. We can only influence, again, by who we choose to be and who we know we are. I have been teaching from a book, The 5 Things We Cannot Change and the Happiness We Find by Embracing Them. And things change and come to an end, as Molly sang that beautiful song. I said, yes, that's true. Life isn't fair. That's another given that every human being, sooner or later, deals with in some way. Pain is part of life. That's another given. And this author says that the ego has a face. F-A-C-E. Fear, attachment to the way it's supposed to be and the outcome, control, and entitlement. This sense of entitlement, not just I, me, mine, but about life in general. This shouldn't be happening. Well, it is. And you either deal with what is from the inner spiritual being of yourself, or you go into trying to control the outer. And that never works. You know, so as within, so without. And so what are we seeing without? We're seeing fragmentation. We're seeing fragmentation of the human spirit. So, you know, my prayer is for awakening and for peace and for compassion and for unity in every sense of the word.
When I hear people say, this shouldn't be happening, it should be happening because it is.
Because it
If it's
is.
happening,
Yes.
it should be happening. And there's a reason for it. But in our current state of affairs, we have lots of things that are juxtaposed to each other that shouldn't be happening. You know, the situation with the police force shouldn't be happening. The vandalism and danger that's created by violent protests shouldn't be happening. The discriminations we face shouldn't be happening. But I did see a sense of unity last night, and that was in the protesters. As a group, I left here about 4 o'clock, and I saw protesters walking down here from about a mile away, walking to the plaza. And they were black, white, Asian, Hispanic. They were old, they were young. I saw lots of young college students that were mixed race groups. And they were all getting along. They all believed in the common cause. And I think that is our hope. The ones that branch out a little bit and get into violence, that's just because that's where their anger has taken them. They do not know what else to do with this rage that they have inside, but to try to get somebody's attention by breaking a window, which they did for me. They got my attention, totally shifted my attitude in regards to, you know, how could they do that, to I hear you, and I will do what I can to help move this along.
Yes, yes, and in my opinion, that's a healthy response, and that's the response that we need. We need our officers who are of outstanding character, who care about people, who went into what they do to be of service to the public. We need them to join with the protesters. I heard someone say that last night, and I said, that's true. There can't be us and them. It has to be all of us, and at the core of that has to be, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, right? Because I'm speaking. It has to be the value held for human life. And that which unites us, pulls us together to stand and to rise to what we are called to be and do.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
So there's great diversity in the world, and in that diversity is our strength and beauty. Nothing is more beautiful than diversity. It's awesome. I've been doing Zoom talks for my church in Arizona, and it's just me looking at me on the screen as I'm talking, and then that gets recorded and it gets posted on the website. What if that were my reality? I go down and I see me at the table, I sit with me on the porch, I dance with me. Well, I do that all the time, but you know what I mean. If there were no one in the world but people who looked like me, thought like me, acted like me, how poor in spirit would I be? You know? This is our work, you know? And it's everyone's work. It's everyone's work.
Well, moving forward, we have plans here at Unity Temple to start to develop groups, small groups, that can focus on this kind of thing. Not only to come up with the things that we can do to make things better, but also to pray through it and send that positive energy out that embraces all people. It's just not going out for one part of the community, whether they are suffering or not suffering. It's everybody. Let us bring this together and try to shift our consciousness from the old, outmoded, outdated, antiquated attitudes that have come forth from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, that primarily started with slavery, I think, in this country. But we can do that. We can move forward, but it's going to be generational. You know, it's like a 1,000-mile trip taking baby steps, but every single step moves us closer. It'd be nice if it happened faster, but it has to go back to the grounding from which this kind of thinking comes forth.
Yes. I want to touch on this too, because this is sweeping our nation on the coattails of the pandemic, when everybody has been isolated, social distancing, frustration, appointments canceled, things, virtual doctor's appointments. You know, you want to be able to see your doctor and say, how do I look? You know, you don't want to be able to do that on the phone with FaceTime and all the various things, and yet we want to keep each other safe. In the same way, this is a virus, and it's just as insidious as COVID-19. So
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, so we are being called to heal our consciousness, and make our experiences count, no matter what they are. You know, no matter the challenges we have, the consciousness we bring to bear on it will shift and heal. That's what I believe.
I talked to my good friend Vitamin Mike from Houston, Texas last night. It was his birthday. Happy birthday, Mike. And he told me that the sheriff in Houston went out to the places where people were protesting, and he joined them.
Yes, I read that.
And he said, I'm here with you. I share your pain. I share your anger. I share your hurt. And he had a couple of other people that worked in his office with him. But he said, you know, if we break something, if we vandalize something, I'm going to have to arrest you. So let's join in this together and really make it work.
Yes.
And it did fabulously. Now, that was very interesting that the enemy came and joined who they saw as the enemy. The cause of all of this who it's been blamed on, is coming in and saying, I'm with you. I am a law enforcement officer and I must do my job, but I am with you.
Yes.
And that really touched my heart.
I think that's very wise. I think that's setting a good example. I have a responsibility here. I feel your pain. That's empathy. That's compassion. I join with you in working to shift this. That's just teamwork. That's a love of people. And if you break a window, I'll have to arrest you because I'm also here to protect all people. And that's holding a healthy boundary and not being swept up in a current, a current that sweeps you away. And next thing you know, you're way downstream and you kind of wake up and go, how did I get here? Because you lost your center and you lost your sense of purpose and responsibility in the big picture.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you more about this. Perhaps another time before you leave. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
But for now, would you lead us in a meditation
Yes.
that we can all come together in mind and in heart, feel the pain, feel the suffering, but feel the healing beginning to take place, and allow us to express the positive prayer energy that we have to the community around us, to the country around us.
Yes, I will. As we turn within and feel whatever it is that we're feeling, I invite us to open our inner listening channels, because indeed we will be led to do the right thing in the right way at the right time. And that is individualized for each of us. I would like to share with you some words from Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And this is from the Other America speech. He said, certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so, in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these reoccurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention. And this, from a friend of mine, the Reverend Dr. David Alexander, who is a CSL minister in Atlanta, which is also experiencing the protests and the riots. He said, we must come to the understanding that every time we are outraged, it is because we have been asked to accept a normal that is not natural. Racism is not natural. Injustice is not natural. Indifference to the inhumane treatment of black and brown bodies is not natural. White supremacy is not natural. For too long, humanity has been conditioned into this unnatural state called normal. Yet we have also been given the tools to change it. It's time that we rise as a human family and address these issues head on as manifestations of a misguided mindset that has been in place for hundreds of years. Consciousness created the place we find ourselves, and consciousness with right action can change it. And so as we pause just to feel what we're feeling, let us surrender deeply into the presence that is all wisdom, that is all love, and ask it to please speak through me, act through me in all manners. Let us rest in the silence. As we begin to return our awareness, let us affirm that each of us is a candle. Let us go forth in this day, speaking words of encouragement, speaking words of spiritual truth. And let our prayer be, heal what needs to be healed in me, so that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart are in alignment with the truth of who I am. And so it is. And so we let it be. Thank you, sweet Spirit. Amen.
Yeah, we've been on this road forever, worn out thousands of our shoes, made trails through the mystery lands, sang our praises, cried our blues, remembered all the lost souls, the ones that we carry in our breasts, and every winding road, all of the hurts we lay to rest. Come on and walk with me, my good friend, cross over the great divide to the land of milk and honey. Stars are out, horizons wide. Come on and walk with me, my good friend, cross over the great divide to the land of milk and honey. Hearts are open, the vision is wide. Now there were some who thought that we would never make it to the promised land. Doubt and greed would overtake us, but then faith would lend a hand. When we walk this way together, goodness is within our reach. See all the fields of plenty and start living the dream of peace. Come on and walk with me, my good friend, cross over the great divide to the land of milk and honey. Stars are out, horizons wide. Come on and walk with me, my good friend, cross over the great divide to the land of milk and honey. Hearts are open, the vision is wide. I have faith that everything is gonna be alright. Yeah, keep your eyes on the prize. Everything'll be alright. Alright. Come on and walk with me, my good friend, cross over the great divide to the land of milk and honey. Stars are out, horizons wide. Come on and walk with me, my good friend, cross over the great divide to the land of milk and honey. Hearts are open, the vision is wide. Oh, the vision is wide.
Once again, thank you, Molly Hammer.
Ham.
Come on up.
I've always called her the Velvet Hammer.
Molly, come on, stand with us. Stand right in the middle. We want to bless you for being here
Yes.
and providing so much happiness and joy during these difficult times.
You had me on my virtual feet.
Thank you.
So we close out the service. I'd like to remind you that we appreciate your contributions that are coming in. They certainly help us to continue forward and do what we need to do to maintain a certain solvency as we go through not only the COVID-19, but some other disruptions in our lifestyles that aren't easy. After the service, there'll be a notice on the screen that tells you exactly how you can give. Also, I'd like to remind you on June 16th, it's Father's Day, and each year we do a video of all the fathers and the grandfathers that are part of this community. So send your pictures in to Unity Temple, attention Christine Garvey, or email them, Christine at unitytemple.com. That being said, we'll now join in the prayer for protection, and then Molly will lead us in the peace song. So together we affirm that the light of God surrounds us. That's all of us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us.
Yeah.
Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
All right, let's sing the peace song together. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with good
Is that a wrap?